Okay, so it is me, NBT SKY. You already know I'm peeking in. So, listen, I did this reading a couple of days ago, and I ended up taking the reading down, right? Because I didn't really get into it like how I wanted to get into it, so I decided I'm going to do it again. I left everything on the board the same, but I'm just going to get a little bit more into it, because it still is an interesting topic to me when we talk about Trump being the president and, the world powers, right? So I broke the United States down in two ways. I broke the United States down in its abbreviated state, which brings you into 5, which is Mercury, and then we did the numbers. I did the numbers on the United States of America as a whole, right? So you got the 84 and 12, which brings you into 3. You break it down again. 21 and 3 brings you into 3, and then the low number and the lowest frequency is the sun. So high frequency is Jupiter, medium frequency is Jupiter, the low frequency is the sun. Now, if we just looking at the abbreviation and we talking about Mercury, right? We talking about change, freedom. We talk about this major arcana of the magician, and the U.S. kind of resembles that magician energy. They have that the power to manipulate, create, and manifest things into reality that actually affect all the other world powers, right? So this comes into the sign of Gemini. Trump is a Gemini, so he kind of lines up with this narrative. Now, I'm not really sure when they stopped counting the polls, but according to what I was told, it was in the middle of the night, like around 1 or 2 o'clock, which is where Gemini kind of lands. If you're looking at an astrology wheel, so you talk about mentality, expression, and communication, right? So the U.S. pushes a particular mentality, and we express a certain way, and then the U.S. is supposed to be this great communicator that's able, to communicate between all the other world powers and still will some type of control, which, kind of falls in that Gemini energy a little bit. Not very much, but a little bit. Now, when we look at how we break it down in a high frequency and in a medium frequency, you got this Jupiter, which is a fire energy. Remember, Mercury, this is only talking about the abbreviated version, so this is not saying this is the overall energy. So let's say maybe Trump, he kind of more so represents that USA type of energy, right? Anyway, Jupiter also confirms the communication and expression and growth type of energy, but it also comes in this wheel of fortune, and when you're talking about the United States, we're talking about a system that's been prominently or supposedly more wealthy than other systems and stronger than other systems, with a whole lot of good luck involved, supposedly, and that lands in a sign of Sagittarius. And then we're talking about philosophy and visions and religions in space, and so we're in the United States. All of these things are diverse in the United States, so it kind of falls in line. Now we're talking about fire energy. Now you see the 7 here. The 7 is only there because in this particular situation, I had to find another way to look at it because the numbers kept matching up between other world powers. So I was trying to figure out, where does the United States of America actually relate to these other world powers? Now, before we get to that, we're going to get to this lower frequency when we talk about the sun. So we're going to talk about the sun. We're going to talk about it in the lowest frequency. This is without the tarot, right? We're going to look at the sun in its lowest frequency. This could be when it's about to rise or when it's about to set. Either way, it's not giving a clear view of what's going on. Now, when you talk about the sun in general, you talk about, new starts and leaderships and individuality, which is what the United States likes to talk about and push all the time. And then when you're dealing with the major arcanas in tarot, then you're talking about this is associated with the card of strength. And when you're talking about the card of strength, this is being able to tame the beast, being able to address your fears, and so on and so forth, which is kind of a narrative that the United States likes to push. Outside of that, you talk about risk, powers, and kind of being able to tame these other powerful systems, if you want to look at it that way. So there's systems involved at the bottom of this board right here that the United States, if they can't control or they can't maintain some type of balance, it'll bring some level of fear. period. So these are the things that the United States would have to address. So now that we get on to that, we're going to look at this 7 real quick, because the 7 was interesting. You talk about this overall energy of the Uranus and Neptune. South Korea and Ukraine comes over in this overall high and medium frequency of the Uranus and Neptune, right? Now, because they kept coming in this, mind you, they matched this U.S. energy in the abbreviated state. If you put them two together, you're still going to get the 10 and the 1, which is going to bring you here. The 1 still comes in a lower frequency, just like here, right? Now, when we talking about Uranus, we talk about air, and we talking about water energy. So if you're dealing with the majors, for who was it? Uranus, you talk about the Fool. So even the Fool, the Fool is about new beginnings, new starts, not knowing, not really being mature. It's the beginning of a journey, but still comes with a whole lot of warnings, and it stands in this Aquarius energy. And Aquarius is very aggressive when it comes to communicating at times. So we're talking about what? Friends, social groups, and long-term goals. Trump, he says, I have these connections amongst these social groups. I have friends that other people do not have friends or connections with that'll bring the United States above the other world powers, let's say. And then, he has his own long-term goals, or there's long-term goals set in that circle. Now, when you get into Neptune, you talk about the water energy. So we talk about air and water. These is, up and high. This brings you into that hangman state. Now, when you talk about the hangman, you could talk about what has to be sacrificed, but you could also talk about how we seeing things from a different view. Kind of standing alone, seeing things from a different view. The United States, whether we want to agree or not, usually has a completely different view than all these other world powers, because we have a country that's very diverse, period. It sits in a sign of Pisces. Pisces can be a very aggressive energy, even though it's a water energy. So you talk about confinement, hospitals, institutions, subconscious minds, and secrets and hidden activities. So if we're dealing with this sun energy in the lower vibration here, you're going to see that there's information that's not being shown to everybody, whether it's the other world powers or whether it's the people on the particular continent. Now, what we have experienced the last couple of years is confinement, right? And we've dealt with hospitalization and institutions, and we dealt with how the media kind of manipulates the subconscious minds and all of the secrets and hidden activities that take place within our own country, outside of the fact that they deal with that with the other world powers. So that fight still remains, regardless, within the system and out the system. So now, if we look at Russia and Japan, that comes down in Venus. Mind you, the thing that's interesting about Russia and Japan is that their major arcana is the Empress and Justice. Is Venus lands in both of those if you're looking at the wheel, astrology wheel and stuff like that. So when you talk about the Empress, you're talking about generational wealth that has always been acquired, whether we like it or not, in Russia and Japan, whether that's natural resources, money, technology, whatever it is they got over there, nuclear power, whatever it is, still puts them in the Emperor state, and this has been that way. They've always had that ability, whether we were aware of it or not. And then you have this concept of needing balance or pushing for balance and justice. The thing that's interesting about Russia and Japan is that if you break their numbers down individually, they can still match the same frequency as the high frequency and the middle frequency as the United States. They still can come into this fire energy and match that same energy as Jupiter, which means that they can kind of wield equal power or very close to the same type of world power that we have. Not saying that they get along, because I had to do a little bit of looking up, and it's friction in between all of them. But if we were saying this and we're speaking about balance, they still have a lot of things that they think about in their societies and in and they countries that's very similar, and individually they can still kind of wield a little bit power equal to the United States, if that was the case. You see the zeros in the lower frequency, so we're going to say that they have secrets that they're not going to ever properly disclose to any other world power, no matter how much power the other world power has. That's how stubborn these two countries are, and that's just how it's going to be. Right? So, back to the Empress. You talk about Empress, and we talk about the signs of Taurus and Libra. So if we talk about the Taurus, we talk about the financial earnings and power and possessions and values, which is a lot of what Japan and Russia push upon. But so does the United States when we have the right person sitting in the seat, right? Then we talk about the Libra energy, this partnership, balance, justice, and open enemies. Now, right now, whether we like to agree with it or not, all of the systems on the board have open enemies. They all screaming that they want balance and justice, and it really is going to depend on how they all click up and who becomes partners that determine whether we're going to have upheaval or balance. It's just that simple. Anyway, so to go a little bit further into it, to show you that, you know, whether that's displayed in the news or publicly about Russia and Japan, they still hold very similar values. No matter how you break them down, whether it's a 24 and a 6 or the 15 and a 6, they still going to break down to the 12. They still going to break down to the 3, and they still going to end up in this energy of the 6 regardless. So it's a little bit balanced. So if you was to put Russia and Japan together and they was actually equal on every level and to get along, they would kind of put America under pressure. I'm sure people know that, but that's what would probably take place. Now with the South Korea and Ukraine situation, right? The thing that was interesting is that, once again, they come up matching the overall. I had to add these up to come up with this Uranus and Neptune, but they match the Uranus and Neptune, which we already talked about. And they high and low frequencies, and then they also match Mercury. Now, what I was looking at is what would be the likelihood that South Korea would support Ukraine. So this is a couple of days back, or maybe a week or so, when I did this read, and when I looked it up, it said that, you know, South Korea kind of got caught supporting Ukraine, which kind of brings us 10 and 1, right? They kind of got exposed. They want to push strength and power also. Would they exactly be able to match the same frequency as the United States? No, not right now. I don't see it. They may have some power, but they still would not exactly match the frequency of the United States. Only because in order for the United States to get some peace, you know, and quiet with the situation with Ukraine and who is it, Russia, the easiest group of individuals to kind of get an agreement with that, you know, could possibly bring some balance is if the United States goes over here and wants to have a discussion with South Korea and Ukraine. It's easier to put them under pressure to get them to kind of come to some type of agreement that Russia might want to agree with, because again, the leader in Russia and the leaders in Japan, they are a little bit more stubborn. They hold a little bit more power than people think. They have a whole lot more wealth than people think, than other world powers. And they have a whole lot of intelligence and secrets that other world powers are not really understanding. The United States understands it. They know it. They might have the one up on it, even though it's in the lowest vibration, which means that they probably not going to show it to or display it to the rest of the population in the United States or the other world powers. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Russia is already knowing that they real tight on their information out here. They're not getting ready to talk about too much. And that's just that. They're not telling too much. They might have things in the brew that you wouldn't even possibly think of. And I'm not saying that to be funny, but that's where that 0 sits. Now, over here, they have the 0 also in their lowest frequency. And there's a lot of things that they don't want to come out. But if you notice, they in this 5. And when you look at the 5, if we want to look at tarot and we're going to look at it in the minor arcanas, you're going to look at like the 5 of swords, the 5 of cups, the 5 of wands, right? Who else am I missing? The 5 of coins. So they maybe, clicking up together because they trying not to lose out in any of these areas. And when you talk about the Five of Cups, they talk about emotionally, family, systems. You talk about money, wealth, natural resources. You talk about in a war. And who else am I talking about? And you talking about in competition on the world stage, period. They don't want to do that, and it's probably why South Korea was being sneaky and kind of wanted to support Ukraine. U.S. got a better chance of getting them in order so that they can get some type of agreement with Russia before they go over there and bother Russia and think they're going to get it in order. That way, Russia is not going to be so likely to bend and fold, only because secretly they have an understanding that they actually have the ability to wield just as much power and just as much influence as the United States. And the person leading that particular country is very smart and knows that. And in Japan, they know that also. And that's probably why there's a conflict going right here, because if you put them two together, the United States is going to be in a whole lot of goddamn trouble. So anyway, outside of that, right? I threw China in there as like a side note. China kind of lands in this Mars energy, this Aries, Scorpio, kind of fire, water energy. So they kind of mixy. And when you're dealing with that, I had to go a little bit into something else. So I said, let me look into another system. So I said, let me see what Ogun's talking about. Ogun talks about technology. He's the god of technology, right? He rules over technology, whether that's in iron. Now, when you think about China has always been a little bit more advanced than a lot of other countries, especially the United States, when it comes to technology. So they kind of fit that. But they warring, the way they come at you is a little bit sneaky. It can be sneaky. And it's probably just tactics. But what I will tell you is this. When they do the sneaky things that they do, whether it's through, medicine, technology, air, water, they been studying this since way back, spiritually and, in science. They've been knew how to kind of sneak these things into systems to get their way. And so, you got to pay attention to everything that's going on around. You can't get mad. But what you don't want to do at the end of the day is kind of piss China off. China still can come into one of the world powers. I didn't put them. They are one of the world powers, but they have the power to shut things down, whether people would like to believe it or not. Russia probably knows it and understands it. United States definitely knows it and understands it. And Japan definitely knows it and understands it. South Korea and Ukraine also know it and understand it. So keeping China a little bit quiet and happy and out of the midst of getting into their little war sneaky tactics and energies, not being funny, but that's just how they come, and that's just how they are, right? Will probably be the best bet, at least until the U.S. can get some resolve between Russia and Ukraine. Now, I'm not a political professional or nothing. I'm just looking at some numbers, and I found the topic to be very interesting because Trump is now currently in office. And he said he gonna get it together. So I'm sure he gonna be right on South Korea and Ukraine's tails, trying to get some balance, because he knows it's gonna be a tough workout with Russia. It's not gonna be that simple. It's a tough workout with Russia. Russia is extremely stubborn. Japan could be stubborn, even though and South Korea could be stubborn. I don't see the Ukraine getting through this particular situation without folding. I just don't. They're going to have to fold to come to some type of agreement. I don't see them getting through this situation without folding. Now, I don't doubt nobody, and I don't sleep on nobody, but I definitely don't see Ukraine getting through the situation without having to come to some type of agreement of folding. I don't see South Korea and Ukraine being able to actually overpower Russia right now. I mean, I just don't see it. Now, we're going to just see what the news say later. But this is how the numerology report going with me. You already know who it is. It is me, NBT SKY. Yes, I already did this one, but I wanted to get into it a little bit more detail so y'all can get some understanding of how the majors and the minors kind of come together. Just one quick run. if you want to come out of here and just look at the basics, you're going to look at the aces and fire. So that was, you're going to look at the ace of wands there. And over here, if you want to look at it just as fire, right? You're going to look at the, if you want to just look at this in Venus, then you're going to look at the six of coins, and you're going to look at the six of swords. If you want to look at this just in air and water, then you're going to look at the seven of cups, and you're going to look at the seven of swords. So you see that backstabbing kind of energy, that sneaky kind of energy. They, South Korea, carry that energy. And then you got these fives right here. If we're going to look at it in air and water, then you still got the five of cups, and you still got the five of swords. And then you back to this. So you see how that go? It's conflict there. They trying to click up together to get this union, this new beginning, you know, this level up. So let's see this strength, let's say, because you know that's in the Leo. And if you're looking at the, maybe looking at the card of strength. So anyway, we're going to see how it kick off. Like Trump said, he going to get to it. So we're going to see how he get to it. But I'm going to be talking to South Korea and Ukraine a whole, as Russia, Japan, and North Korea probably is going to be a little bit hard to put in the equation. And I'm sure they're be a little bit aggy being that supporting Ukraine, and the United States is trying to and stop the whole situation between Russia. So anyway, it was just an interesting topic. See you with the other readings that I need to post up. Anyway, talk to you, Sky. Deuces.